Ethan Vance, a talented young CEO, is only 29 years old at the peak of his career, but perhaps his soul is quite lonely. By his side is always Olivia Davenport, 54 years old, a close friend of his mother, Eleanor, also 54 years old. Olivia is like an aunt, a soulmate that Ethan has always respected since childhood, a relationship that seems impossible to change. But then one moment, an unexpected event happens, making Ethan look at Aunt Liv with a completely different look. It is no longer just respect, but the vibration of a man before a charming, intelligent, and profound woman. And that is when the tragedy begins. Ethan's intense internal struggle, the extreme torment between his intense love for Olivia and his extreme guilt towards his mother. Is this true love or just a wrong obsession? Can this 25-year age gap and complex social relationship survive? And what will happen when the mother, best friend, Eleanor, discovers this shocking truth? Will the decades-long friendship, the mother-daughter relationship, be broken? How harsh will society's judgment be? The CEO Loves Mom's Best Friend will take you into a whirlwind of forbidden emotions, torment, and heartbreaking consequences. If you're curious about how this ill-fated love story ends, don't miss this story. Ethan Vance, at 29, is already a household name in the New York tech world. He is the CEO of Vance Innovations, a company he started with a bold idea and is now on the rise. Early success often comes at the price of loneliness and relentless pressure. Ethan lives and breathes his work. His office on the top floor of a modern glass building reflects that, orderly to the point of being sterile, with sweeping views of the city but lacking in personal warmth. He is smart, determined, sometimes aloof and impatient, qualities that make him successful in business but create an invisible distance from those around him, including his mother, Eleanor Vance. Eleanor Vance, 54, is a strong, successful public relations woman who focuses on her image, social and somewhat controlling. The relationship between her and Ethan is somewhat distant, more of a sense of obligation than of sharing and understanding. Ethan respects his mother, but rarely confides in her or seeks sympathy from her. Instead, the person he feels he can talk to comfortably, the person who always brings warmth and understanding, is Olivia Davenport, his mother's best friend since college. Olivia, also 54, is an independent art consultant, a charming, intelligent, and experienced woman. She has long been divorced and lives a free and independent life in a cozy apartment filled with books and works of art in the West Village. For Ethan, from when he was a boy until he became a young CEO, Olivia has always been Aunt Liv, the wonderful aunt, the confidant of his mother whom he greatly respects. She always listened to him patiently, gave thoughtful advice without judgment, and brought a genuine warmth that he did not find in his mother. The close friendship between Eleanor and Olivia, which had lasted for decades, was something Ethan had always admired and considered an indispensable part of his family life. The line between aunt and niece, between respect and family affection, was always clear, until one day. It was a gloomy winter evening. Vance Innovations was facing an unexpected media crisis due to a serious product defect. Ethan had been working hard for several days, stressed and exhausted. He called his mother, hoping to find some comfort, but Eleanor focused on how the company's image and the family's reputation would be affected, offering empty advice about keeping up appearances. The conversation only made Ethan more frustrated and lonely. That evening, at Eleanor's regular dinner, the atmosphere was somewhat heavy. Ethan barely said anything, just ate in silence. Eleanor continued her song about image and responsibility. Only Olivia, with her exquisite sensitivity, noticed the deep instability in Ethan's eyes and tired appearance. After dinner, when Eleanor was busy on the phone with a partner, Olivia skillfully pulled Ethan out onto the balcony. "You don't look so good, Ethan," she said softly, her voice warm and familiar. "Is something wrong at the company?" Ethan hesitated, then suddenly poured out everything he felt. The stress, the pressure, the fear of failure, and even the disappointment with his mother's reaction. He spoke in one breath, something he had never done with anyone before. Olivia just listened silently, her eyes full of sympathy and understanding. She didn't offer empty advice, didn't judge. She just placed her hand gently on his shoulder. "Every storm passes, Ethan," she said softly. "What matters is that you learn from it and stay strong. You're smart and strong enough to get through this. Don't be too hard on yourself, and don't expect others to understand your burdens. Sometimes we have to find our own strength." Olivia's words were simple, but they touched a deep place in Ethan's heart. That genuine empathy, that wordless understanding was like a warm stream of water that soothed his tense soul. He looked up at her, into her warm, wise, tea-brown eyes, into the gentle yet vibrant smile on her face, wrinkled by time but still strangely charming. And in that moment, something changed. For the first time in his life, Ethan didn't see Olivia as his beloved Aunt Liv, his mother's best friend. He saw her as a woman who was intelligent, thoughtful, independent, and unexpectedly attractive. His heart skipped a beat. A completely new feeling, both sweet and scary, crept into his mind. He quickly turned away, confused by his own reaction. Thank you, Aunt Liv. You're right." He made an excuse of being tired and quickly excused himself, leaving his mother's house in a state of turmoil. On the way home, the image of Olivia, her eyes and smile, kept haunting him. He tried to tell himself that it was just gratitude, a temporary admiration due to his stress and loneliness. That was Aunt Liv, his mother's best friend, 25 years older than him. Any other thought was wrong, an unacceptable taboo. He had to get it out of his mind immediately. But he knew, from that moment, the fragile boundary had begun to break. The following weeks became a mental torture for Ethan. He tried to bury himself in work, handling the company's media crisis with intense concentration, hoping that the busyness would help him forget his strange feelings for Olivia. But the more he tried to suppress them, the stronger they became. Olivia's image, her voice, the warmth and understanding in her eyes crept into his thoughts when he least expected it. He found himself comparing every woman he met to her, and no one could match her intelligence, sophistication, and depth of soul. The guilt gnawed at him relentlessly. Every time he saw his mother, he felt like a vile traitor. His mother and Olivia had had a close friendship for decades, something he had always treasured, and now he was having crazy thoughts that could destroy it all. He feared the prospect of his mother discovering the truth, feared the judgment of society, feared himself for not being able to control his heart. The inner torment began to manifest itself. Ethan became more irritable, easily angered by his employees for small mistakes. He lost focus in meetings. His mind often wandered. He began to avoid his mother and Olivia. Family dinners became torture. He tried to act normal, but did not dare to look Olivia straight in the eye, or sometimes unconsciously looked at her for too long, making himself startled. He turned to alcohol more in the evening, hoping that the alcohol could help him forget his guilty thoughts, but it only made him more miserable and stuck. Olivia, with the sensitivity of an experienced woman and a deep understanding of Ethan since he was a child, could not help but notice the unusual change in his attitude. The way he looked at her was no longer the affectionate respect of a grandchild, but something more intense, more complicated, sometimes confusion, sometimes incomprehensible avoidance. She saw him deliberately keeping his distance during meetings, or on the contrary, finding no reason to call or text her, asking about unrelated things. At first, Olivia thought that Ethan was still stressed about work, or maybe he was having some personal emotional problems. She tried to ask him tactfully, but he always avoided her. Gradually, as his attention became more obvious and somewhat obsessive, a vague unease began to invade Olivia. She didn't dare to think of the worst possibility, but her woman's intuition told her that something was wrong. She felt extremely awkward and confused. Ethan was the child she had watched grow up. She loved him like a grandchild in the family. Any other thought was unthinkable and wrong. The meetings involving all three of them, Ethan, Eleanor, and Olivia, became strangely stifling. Eleanor, perhaps too busy with her work and social life, or simply unable to imagine the possibility, seemed oblivious to the simmering tension between her son and his best friend. She continued to chat and make plans together, a carefreeness that only added to Ethan's guilt and Olivia's awkwardness. While co-organizing a major charity event, Ethan and Olivia were forced to work alone in a small room to discuss plans. The air was thick with awkwardness. Ethan tried to focus on his work, but his eyes were constantly drawn to Olivia's little gestures, the way she brushed her hair back, the way she squinted over her papers, the slight smile when she thought of a good idea. Olivia could feel his gaze too. She tried to keep her face professional, but her hand holding the pen was shaking slightly. Realizing that the situation was going in a dangerous direction, Olivia decided to take action. She picked a good time when they were alone to talk to Ethan in private, gently but clearly. "Ethan," she began, her tone as warm as ever, "I've noticed you've been a little different lately. Is there anything you'd like to share with me?" Ethan hesitated, not knowing what to say. Olivia looked straight into his eyes, her gaze serious but not reproachful. "You know, you've always been like a son to me and your mother. That feeling is very precious. I hope you always remember that." She deliberately emphasized the aunt-nephew relationship, hoping he would understand the hidden meaning and stop thinking wrongly. Olivia's reminder was like a knife stabbing Ethan's racing heart. He knew she was right. He knew this feeling was wrong, impossible. But instead of extinguishing the fire in his heart, her words made him even more miserable and desperate. He felt torn between reason and emotion, between duty and desire, between guilt and a love that he knew he shouldn't have but couldn't give up. His internal struggle became more and more intense, pushing him to the brink of losing control. The prolonged torment almost exhausted Ethan both physically and mentally. He tried to date other women, hoping to forget Olivia, but all in vain. No one could replace the intelligence, the depth, and the special warmth he felt from her. He became more and more distant, lonely, immersed in work and strong drinks in the evening. The final straw came late one evening at a fancy bar. Ethan went there alone after a stressful day at work. He drank quite a lot, his mind was hazy, the torment about Olivia became more and more painful, and then, as if by a twist of fate, he saw Olivia sitting at another table with a few friends. She looked so charming in a blue silk dress, smiling brightly as she talked. A feeling of jealousy and mad despair invaded Ethan. He could not bear it anymore. Against all reason, against all consequences, he staggered to Olivia's table, ignoring the surprised looks of her friends. "Aunt Liv," he called, his voice hoarse with alcohol and emotion. I need to talk to you. Now." Olivia was stunned by Ethan's appearance and unusual attitude. She politely excused herself to her friends and went to a secluded corner with Ethan, her face showing worry and displeasure. "Ethan, you're drunk. What's wrong?" "I'm not drunk!" Ethan almost shouted, then lowered his voice, looking straight at Olivia with pained eyes. "I can't take this anymore, Aunt Liv. I know this is wrong, this is crazy. But I love you. I love you." The confession was uttered in a state of loss of control, but contained all the sincerity and anguish Ethan had been holding back for so long. He looked at Olivia with a desperate gaze, waiting for judgment, disgust, anything. Olivia was completely dumbfounded. Ethan's words were like a thunderbolt. She looked at her beloved nephew, now standing before her, drunk and confessing a forbidden love. The initial shock quickly gave way to disappointment, anger, and a deep sense of hurt. "Ethan," her voice shook with anger and hurt. "What the hell are you talking about? Do you know what you're doing? I'm your mother's best friend. I've known you since you were a baby. How could you?" She couldn't continue, disgust and sadness welling up inside her. "That feeling is wrong, Ethan. It can't and should never exist. Get a grip." She turned away, intending to leave, not wanting to hear another word. But the tragedy didn't end there. At that moment, Eleanor Vance, who happened to be at the bar after an event, saw her son holding his best friend's hand with a desperate look on his face. Curious and a little suspicious, she approached and heard Olivia's angry last words almost completely and saw the pain on Ethan's face. What's going on here?" Eleanor's voice trembled. A bad feeling began to take over her. Ethan and Olivia both turned around, their faces pale when they saw Eleanor. The truth could no longer be hidden. In that tense moment of silence, Eleanor's shocked, hurt gaze from Ethan to Olivia said it all. She understood. "No, it can't be," Eleanor muttered, taking a step back, feeling like the world was collapsing under her feet. Her only son and her best friend, who she considered a sister, She didn't dare to think further. The feeling of being betrayed by the two people she loved the most at the same time was too great a shock. "Eleanor, let me explain." Olivia tried to speak, but Eleanor cut her off with a scream of pain and anger. "Shut up! Both of you! Don't say anything! You're disgusting!" Tears rolled down her cheeks. She turned and ran out of the bar, leaving Ethan and Olivia standing there, immersed in the guilty silence and terrible consequences of a love that should not have been. The earthquake had really happened, destroying everything in its path. The earthquake from that fateful night had left irreparable cracks in the relationship between the three of them. Eleanor completely cut off contact with Olivia, her best friend of decades, who had now become a disgusting traitor in her eyes. The friendship that seemed unbreakable had evaporated in hurt and anger. Towards Ethan, she maintained a cold, distant attitude that was frightening. Family dinners no longer existed. Phone calls were only brief, dry exchanges about work or necessary matters. She looked at him not with the eyes of a mother, but with disappointment, reproach, and even undisguised contempt. Olivia also disappeared from the lives of the Vance mother and son. She moved away, changed her phone number, and tried to erase all traces of her painful past. The pain of losing her best friend and the guilt of inadvertently causing the breakup made her withdraw into herself, living a quieter life. Although she had no fault in Ethan's feelings, the incident left a deep scar on her heart. Ethan was the one who faced the most severe consequences. He lost his last connection to his mother, lost the aunt he had always respected and loved, and lost the love he knew was wrong but could not forget. Guilt, torment, and loneliness overwhelmed him. He threw himself into work like a madman, turning Vance Innovations into an even more powerful technology empire, but that success could not fill the vast void in his soul. He had it all: money, power, fame, but he felt emptier than ever. He tried to start new relationships, but no one could replace Olivia's place in his heart. The image of her, her intelligence, her warmth, and her painful rejection haunted him constantly. He often turned to alcohol to forget, but it only made the pain more painful. Torment became a constant companion, a price too high for a love that went against all common sense. Time passed, maybe a few years. Ethan became quieter, more mature, but also more lonely. He understood his selfishness and emotional mistakes in the past. He knew he had hurt both his mother and Olivia, the most important women in his life. He learned to live with that pain and regret, accepting that there were mistakes that could never be corrected. Maybe, by chance, he would meet Olivia again at an art event. They looked at each other from afar, their eyes filled with a myriad of complex emotions. Embarrassment, sadness, a little regret, but no longer reproach or desire. There was only an impassable distance. They just nodded to each other and passed by like two strangers who had known each other. Or maybe he would never see her again. He only kept her image in his memory as a reminder of a forbidden love that had cost him a torment that would last the rest of his life. He was still a successful, powerful CEO, but deep inside, he would always be the young man who fell in love with his mother's best friend, a love that tormented him endlessly, a wound that would never truly heal. The world might admire his success, but only he knew the price of loneliness and the torment hidden behind that halo. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this story. If you like this content, don't forget to click like, share this story with your friends and family, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more meaningful stories.